Looking for the perfect weekend getaway? Love Lansing like a local. And we promise, you'll love Lansing just as much as we do.
You're watching My Michigan TV.
It's time for Lehto Live. Join author, historian, radio host, and YouTube sensation Steve Lehto as he breaks down Michigan's top stories, talks with business leaders and professional experts, and checks out the variety of statewide festivals and events that Michigan has to offer. You're watching Lehto Live on My Michigan TV.
Welcome to My Michigan Television. I'm Steve Lehto. This is unbelievable. I was just talking to my producer, Jared Clark, off camera, and said, I'm on the waiting list to get tickets for The Cure. And if I get the text coming through while I'm on the air, I will drop what I'm doing and order the tickets live on the air. Well, it just came through, and it will not let me order the tickets. So I am now stuck here looking at a thing saying, would you like to order tickets? And every time I log in, it says that is not correct. And I'm not sure if it's because I'm trying to do this on my cell phone versus my desktop. I don't know. So it may be that I'm losing my opportunity right now to do that. But what can I tell you? So there you go. It's 29 degrees outside right now. It's supposed to hit a high of 46 today. That's not bad. I'll take it. Tomorrow, Thursday, 52 degrees and rain. Nice and warm, but rain. Friday, 49 and rain. So temperature's going up, but the precipitation's coming in. Now, here's something you need to know about in Michigan, and that is the plants that come in the spring that are dangerous to you. There are dangerous plants here in Michigan. And so the Detroit Free Press ran an article called 6 Poisonous Plants in Michigan and What You Need to Know. And I encourage you to look at this because some of these plants are innocuous, meaning that they look like they're nothing, but they'll get you. And I have problems with poison ivy and poison oak. Almost every year I get poison ivy. Poison oak I've had a couple times. It's similar, but it looks different. And one time I went into a doctor. I go, Doc, I think I got poison ivy. And he goes, no, that's poison oak. I said, oh, okay. It explains why I don't remember how I got it. So with spring on the horizon, knowing what plants are poisonous is important, as Michigan has many poisonous plants. They can cause rashes. Some can even lead to death, believe it or not. And keep in mind, by the way, that if you avoid poison ivy, for instance, but you've got a dog, your dog runs around in the poison ivy, and later on the dog runs around you, and you touch the dog, you might get the poison ivy off the dog. I know on one occasion, back when I had Milo and Wolfie, that Wolfie was cutting through some spots where there was poison ivy, and later on, he walked over and he tapped me with his paw. And the scratch he put in my arm became infected. I went to a doctor. I think poison ivy. And the guy goes, yep, poison ivy. And I got it from my dog who had stepped in it and gotten it on his nails. So giant hogweed is the first thing you need to be aware of. Giant hogweed. According to the Michigan State Extension website, giant hogweed can cause severe reactions caused by the sap on the plant. Keep in mind, this one is a big plant. You can't miss this thing. And it can cause skin lesions and even long-term blindness. If you get this stuff on your skin or in your eyes, it's obviously very, very bad. Giant hogweed has clusters of umbrella-shaped white flowers. The plant can grow 7 to 14 feet tall and has stems that are green with purple splotches, according to the Michigan Invasive Species List. There's also poison hemlock, which sounds bad, but again, the question is, you've heard these words before, but if you haven't seen it, so just like giant hogweed, poison hemlock has clusters of white flowers and the stems have purple splotches. According to an article by the healthcare blog Healthline, one difference between the two is that hemlock is found all over the U.S., while hogweed is less common and it's only found in specific regions. Poison hemlock is a weed, and it's actually a wild carrot. It's another Michigan weed, often mistaken for hemlock. It's typically found in the lower peninsula counties, but has been found in the upper peninsula as well. The seeds, flowers, leaves, and roots of the plant contain toxic alkaloids that can lead to respiratory failure and death, according to Healthline. The leaves on hemlock resemble parsley, which sometimes leads to accidental poisoning because people say, oh, that's parsley. I can eat that. Number 3 on the list is poison ivy, which is the bane of my existence. I don't like poison ivy. I encounter it all the time, and I about once a year. I get it. You go to the doctor, they give you some pills, it goes away. But if you don't get it taken care of, it itches, and it can spread, and it can get ugly. And I've never had a really bad case of it, but I've known people who would go to the hospital because of the reaction they had to poison ivy. Poison ivy can be found in every single county in the state of Michigan, every single one. According to the MSU Extension website, it's common. Humans have the potential to have an allergic reaction to it because of an oily resin that is all over the plant. It's on the leaves, the stems, and even the roots. Now, you'll spot it because poison ivy has 3 leaves. And they always say, leaves of 3, let it be. That's the old Boy Scout rhyme. And I've been in a state park before. They have a sign that says, this is poison ivy, in case you don't know, because there's a spot where this huge stretch of poison ivy grows every single year. And instead of trying to kill it, they just put up a sign saying, poison ivy, beware and study it, learn it. According to the Mayo Clinic, poison ivy can cause all kinds of symptoms, including a nasty rash, redness, itching, swelling, blisters, and even difficulty breathing. It's best to wash your skin immediately if you come in contact with it. And for me, poison ivy tends to be one of those things that only bothers me if I get it into a scratch or an open cut or something. I don't think it affects me if I simply touch it to my skin. At least it doesn't affect me that badly. But I know that if I have a scratch or a cut and I get it in there, it gets bad. And a couple of years ago, I actually went in and went hiking up in the Upper Peninsula. And there's poison ivy where I was hiking. And I got poison ivy in my shoes. And I didn't think about it. And I took the shoes off. And later on, I went on a trip out of state. And I wore those shoes on the airplane. And towards the end of the trip, my feet started to itch really bad. And so I took my shoes off later, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I had poison ivy in my shoes. Now my feet are all messed up because of the scraping inside the shoes. And so I went to a doctor, and I said, I got poison ivy. And he goes, no, you don't. We don't have poison ivy in this state. And I said, well, it's from Michigan. Guy goes, well, you got to wait till you go back to Michigan then, talk to your doctor, because I don't think that's poison ivy. And so it's like, well, dude, I've had it before. I've got it again. I know what it is, poison ivy. And of course, I had to suffer for a few days, went back to Michigan. My doctor said, yep, poison ivy, and prescribed the prescription. And I asked him, I said, why do you suppose the guy in the other state didn't believe me? And he goes, once in a while, it's, people are go to a doctor and fake an illness to get drugs. I said, yeah, but is there really a need for the drugs that I'm trying to get here? And he goes, just a knee-jerk response, I guess. Poison oak. Poison oak, this is a misnomer. Oak, of course, is a tree, like an oak tree, a white oak tree, red oak, pin oak, live oak, swamp oak, okay? But poison oak is not a tree. And I think the reason they call it this is that the shape of the leaves look a lot like oak leaves, but the plant is smaller and it's very, very low to the ground. So the poison oak will be down near the ground. When I got poison oak, I was clearing some brush before I had a brush cutter. I was using a chainsaw, and I was in this area of brush swinging a chainsaw right above the ground, like literally this high off the ground, swinging a chainsaw back and forth, back and forth. I had gloves on my hands, but as I moved my arms, my sleeves got pulled up and stuff's flying off the chainsaw, hitting my arms. And I got all scratched up and got the poison oak in my open cuts there on my arm. Went into a doctor, said, I think it's poison ivy. And he goes, no, that's poison oak. He goes, were you working really close to the ground? And I said, yes, I was running a chainsaw this far off the ground. He goes, that's where poison oak is. So poison oak is lower to the ground than poison ivy. Poison ivy tends to be fairly low, but poison ivy, I think, is more common. But poison oak is out there. It's a native to North America, typically found in eastern and central Michigan. Similar to poison ivy, contains the same oily resin that causes the problems. It's a shrub that is 3 or 4 feet tall at most, but it's often lower than that. Contains small white flowers in the spring. The chemical found in this plant can affect your skin, eye, and respiratory system, according to New England Carnivorous Plant Society. The New England Carnivorous Plant. I don't know if this thing's going to eat you or not, but apparently carnivorous plants are out there. They have their own society. Number 5 is poison sumac. Poison sumac is similar to poison ivy and poison oak in terms of having the poisonous oily resin called urushiol. I could be mispronouncing it, and I probably am. The same symptoms apply as well and can be noticed within 8 to 48 hours after contact, according to an article by Healthline. The plant has reddish stems and leaves that contain 7 to 13 leaflets arranged in pairs with a single leaflet at the end, plus additional looks as well. Plant can be found in swamps, wetlands, or hardwood forests. But keep in mind that poison sumac is a relative, apparently, of a much more mild thing like staghorn sumac. So if you drive around in late summer in Michigan, especially up north, you'll see these bushes. They can grow very, very tall, and they've got these red flower-like things on them. It's called staghorn sumac, and they look almost like the horns or antlers of an animal, and they're covered with this fuzzy red stuff. And that's staghorn sumac, which is absolutely fine. You could smoke that stuff. You could eat it. It won't hurt you. But poison sumac will get you. And so I've had people say before, oh, that's sumac, that's dangerous. Well, no, poison sumac is dangerous. The other sumacs are not. I've got staghorn sumac growing on my property. I think it's cool. It's a neat shrub, and it's something that just grows naturally. And I think it looks neat, and it grows very large, grows very hardy, it's big and survives. And I like that. The 6th one they warn you about is wild parsnip, a biennial flowering herb on a single stem that can grow to 5 feet with leaflets that are toothed and shaped like a mitten, according to the Michigan Invasive Species List. These plants are invasive because they are native to Eurasia and are often found in open fields and open areas. Wild parsnip spreads through their seeds when carried by wind, water, or equipment. The stem, leaves, and flowers contain chemicals that increase skin sensitivity to sunlight and can cause severe blisters or rashes, according to the Michigan Invasive Species List. So if you're going to go out and tramp around out in the woods, you got to keep your eyes peeled. And of course, it's smart to cover yourself, especially below the waist. Long pants, boots, and make sure there's no bare skin down there. And you'll discover, for instance, if you've got a little strip of skin right at the top of your boot that's not covered, that's where you're going to get hit. And so, I learned to deal with this stuff a long time ago. And the only time it's gotten me in the last few years is when I let my guard down and literally didn't, exercise caution out there. So I got poison ivy last year. The year before I got poison ivy, poison oak. And the poison ivy last year, I'm trying to remember, but it was a situation where I think I was clearing brush and I had gloves on and long sleeves on. And again, I got it on my arms. And so it's that and deer ticks. You got to watch for deer ticks outside also. It turns out that a lot of what's out in the wild in Michigan is, in fact, trying to kill you. You should just know that and learn to deal with it. So we're going to take a quick break here, and we're going to talk about the lighthouse at Fort Gratiot in the news right after this on My Michigan Television.
What makes a destination special? Experience wide open spaces, peaceful lakes, winding trails, sweeping vistas, and flowing rivers. All natural, all good, all fun. Your all outdoors adventure awaits at GaylordMichigan.net. Looking for the perfect weekend getaway? Love Lansing like a local. And we promise, you'll love Lansing just as much as we do.
My Michigan TV is streaming everywhere on Apple TV, Roku, Fire TV, and more smart TV apps. My Michigan TV is on your phone too. Take us with you wherever you go. Just search for My Michigan TV on your favorite app store or visit mymitv.com. All Michigan, streaming everywhere. My Michigan TV.
Meanwhile, the Fort Gratiot Lighthouse made the news, and Fort Gratiot is up here a ways, near Port Huron. And I actually wrote about this lighthouse in passing in talking about Douglas Houghton, because the man who built the lighthouse in question was a friend of Douglas Houghton's, and it happened right around the same time. But history buffs are now pointing out a mistake that Chevrolet made with respect to a famed Michigan lighthouse. Jamie LaRoe writes that General Motors Chevrolet dealers in Michigan like to show off vehicles on social media by placing them in front of recognizable landmarks. But they recently put a photo on Instagram of a Silverado pickup in front of the Fort Gratiot Lighthouse, one of the most famous lighthouses in the state and possibly even the nation because it's so old. A group of eagle-eyed history buffs took to Facebook to point out the mistake. In a March 7th post on the Port Huron Museum's Facebook page, it asked, Chevy got one thing very wrong about the Fort Gratiot Light in their recent ad at the lighthouse. Do you know what it is and why it's that way? And this, by the way, is an extremely minor thing. The post contained the photo of the Silverado parked in front of the lighthouse, a CGI-installed yellow beacon beaming from the top of the lighthouse. There were humorous replies such as the fact that a Dodge Ram would have looked better. But most of the comments nailed it. The CGI added a yellow beacon when the color is wrong. It should not be yellow. Fort Gratiot Lighthouse has a green light. It was changed to green in 1934. This green light was installed so ships could tell the difference between the lighthouse light and train headlights of the engines that were coming to the paper mill and other industries along the waterfront. The woman who wrote those comments said that people who said the light would be green are right, because according to FortGratiotLight.org, it says an electric oscillator fog signal replaced the steam whistle in 1934, the same year the tower's light was changed to green. 82-foot tall lighthouse sits at the entrance of the St. Clair River from Lake Huron. It's Michigan's oldest lighthouse, according to PortHuronMuseum.org. It was first built in 1825, where the first Blue Water Bridge stands, but that was a bad location, and the poorly constructed lighthouse crumbled into the river in 1828. So the first lighthouse lasted all of 3 years. In 1829, a new lighthouse was built at its current location, where a Coast Guard station and the lighthouse watch over one of the busiest waterways in the world. And the man who is charged with building that lighthouse is Lucius Lyon. Lucius Lyon, a friend of Douglas Houghton's and a very important person in early Michigan history and an early resident of the city of Detroit. The green beacon has a 14-mile range and shoots a half-second flash every 6 seconds, according to an article. The green lens also doubles as the cap for its festive wardrobe during the Christmas season. Chevrolet spokesperson Sean Shumowski said the dealer team had produced the photo, is now aware of the mistake, and will update it with the correct beacon color in the near future. So, of course, these pictures have been sent out and used everywhere. And if they redo it, then they got to resend it. The question is it worth all that trouble? And by the way, they're getting tons of free publicity out of this. And this is the kind of thing where it's not like they insulted anybody. It's not like they made a real embarrassing mistake. It's just the kind of thing that who'd have thought they'd catch it? But they did. It was a social media post that the local dealership association created in Detroit. Upon being notified, the post will be corrected. We have no further comment on this, they said. Fort Gratiot Light, the first lighthouse in the state of Michigan, was constructed north of Fort Gratiot, 1829, by Lucius Lyon, who, by the way, was Michigan's first U.S. senator, one of the first Michigan senators. I found some more information here that I wanted to let you know about. The Fort Gratiot Light marks the entrance to St. Clair River from Lake Huron as you head south. In the southern portion of Michigan's Thumb, the light is still active and the grounds are an active Coast Guard facility, but it has recently been handed over to the Port Huron Museum. It is the oldest surviving lighthouse in Michigan. There is also a public beach and park on the property known as Lighthouse Beach. Now, facing it across the river is the Point Edward Front Range Light. Point Edward Front Range Light. With the completion of the Erie Canal, traffic in the Great Lakes increased dramatically. We're talking about the 1830s. Coal was being brought from Michigan, stone and timber was being brought from Wisconsin, and the entrance to the St. Clair River became a bottleneck. In 1823, which of course is 14 years before Michigan became a state, Congress appropriated $3,500 to construct a light in the Michigan Territory near Fort Gratiot. Contract for construction of the lighthouse and the keeper's dwelling was awarded to Captain Winslow Lewis of Massachusetts. Lewis was the inventor of the patented Lewis lamp, which the fifth auditor had universally adopted as the primary source of illumination in the nation's growing inventory of lighthouses. Lewis had branched out into the business of lighthouse construction, and as the frequent low bidder was being awarded a growing number of contracts to fulfill the nation's need for navigational aids on the East Coast. But as noted earlier, the one he built didn't last terribly long, which might explain that low bid. Lewis subcontracted the construction of the tower and keeper's dwelling that would become known as the Fort Gratiot Light to Daniel Warren of Rochester, New York. Work commenced on the structure, but appears to have been running far behind the scope of the original bid since Congress appropriated an additional $5,000 for the project's completion in 1825. The original tower is 32 feet tall. Even with the major cost overrun, it became quickly apparent the structure was both poorly designed and constructed. A former Detroit lawyer was selected as the light's first official keeper. His reports indicated that stairs were so steep that they had to be climbed sideways, and the trap door into the lantern room was barely large enough for a man to squeeze through. Now, however, he was also reputedly a short man who was overweight and may have weighed more than 300 pounds. And as such, he hired an assistant to climb those steep stairs and squeeze through that too small door. We all know what's going on here, but we're going to be nice about it, okay? His concerns were supported when the tower was damaged during a storm in the fall of 1828 and then collapsed. Congress reacted swiftly and appropriated $8,000 for a new tower in 1829. That tower was 65 feet tall, 25 feet in diameter, and was outfitted with the Lewis lamp system, powered by whale oil, believe it or not. That was then the standard. So that was then the lighthouse built by Lucius Lyon, and that lighthouse is still standing. Okay, so 1829, 1830, okay, from that date until now, it is still standing. That is a heck of a lighthouse, especially considering the previous one lasted 2 years. Okay, so Lucius Lyon, like I said, is one of the movers and shakers in early Detroit, and he did, in fact, know Douglas Houghton. So, or Houghton knew him. And there's actually been books written about a lot of lighthouses, including that one. And I believe there's even a biography of Lucius Lyon, which I think I've got a copy of. But the main thing he's known for is the fact that he built a lighthouse that is the oldest one still standing in Michigan and one of the oldest still standing in the country. And so it's a heck of a lighthouse, and it's right there. And it makes sense. You think about the waterways that are the Great Lakes, one of the most trafficked and actually difficult to navigate is right there, because so many boats come in from both directions. And there's actually a current there, as opposed to, like, there's not much of a current, like, say, between Lake Michigan and Lake Huron. And so there's all kinds of things happening up there. So it's very, very important for them to have a good lighthouse. So that's the situation with the lighthouse at Fort Gratiot and the Cheviot that got it wrong. And now the question I have here is, and I'm going to change topics on you again, but I mentioned this earlier. I just got a text telling me that I can log on and order tickets by using this special thing here. And it says log in with this name, which is me, and use your access code, which they give me there. So I press the button and I go there, and it says, would you like to join the queue? I say yes. Makes sense, right? So I type in my email address. That should get me there. And then the question is, it says type in your password. Is that the password to the account? Or is that the password to the thing that they just gave me? Nope, we're unable to sign you in. Well, that's annoying. Let's try this again here. Oh, boy. So I click that there, and it won't let me in. It says you can request a new password. Okay, let's try that. Need a new password? Try that. Send a code to my phone number. I know this is exciting, but you have to understand my point here. That they just sent me a new number. Okay. This is modern problems in modern technology. So is it there? No. Is it there? Yes. Okay. So now I need to put the reset code in here. Type in these numbers. I'd put this up on the screen, but then I'd have to pass all kinds of stuff out there. Let's go with, let's try that. Okay. Hang on a second. Your password was reset. So now we got to start over again. Oh boy. Huh. And now it says that I'm in the queue. How did that happen? And it says I'm in the queue with 5 people ahead of me. So this is exciting, because I'll tell you right now that they announced last week. Oh, enter your offer passcode. Hang on a second. Let's see if this works. I bet this is where I'm going to get kicked out, I bet. So hang on a second. And the passcode entered is invalid. Of course it is. Why wouldn't it be? Hang on a second. You wouldn't think case would matter, like uppercase, lowercase, right? Would that matter? I wouldn't think so. Yep. Password is in. Oh, never mind. Now it says here I can order tickets. I can order up to 4 tickets. Ticket quantities that I can't get 4. I can only get 2. Well, it looks like it's sold out. So I guess the half hour I dilly-dallied around without redoing my password cost me. So I don't understand. Why don't they just tell you? I mean, why would they let you in and say you can order, and then it says literally nothing is available? That seems kind of pointless to me. Shouldn't they have said nothing's available? I would have thought. Oh, wait, will they let me sit on the stage? No. I'm not quite sure what enter passcode again. Unlock. Passcode entered is invalid. So that means I got to go, I guess the uppercase does matter. Not sure why that would be. Let's try that. Unlock. Passcode entered is invalid. Well, I can get lawn at general admission, apparently. You know something? I'm gonna get lawn tickets. Why not? You know? So here's what we're gonna do. I know. Nope, gone, all gone. Can't even get lawn tickets. Oh well, I tried. That's so sad. That's so sad. Anyway, I'm sure I can pay $800 a piece and get bad seats in the back. That's what happens. So that's my fault. I would have been better off if I'd been in front of a big screen with a keyboard and probably could have figured this out faster, but it does appear that the seats are all gone. But I don't know what else to tell you. So I don't even know what this thing's doing to me now. So tell you what we're going to do. We're going to come back in just a second, and we're going to talk about the banking situation in America, which is not looking that good. There have been some issues lately, and there's more coming, according to Moody's, the people who rate things in the financial system, right after this on My Michigan Television.
We are connected to our Lake Huron shoreline, all 93 miles of it. Hidden bays and marinas dot our shores. Points of entry to our world. Open waters and waves, alive with people at play. Inspiration floats on sparkling waves. We are in awe of its strength and in love with its allure. We nurture it, play in it, savor it. Huron County Waters.
With all of our programming.
I was literally trying to order tickets during that break, and it would tell me, oh, you want these tickets? Order them. I'd order them. It says, oh, they're already taken. So I go back and go, okay, how about these tickets? Oh, you want those tickets? Here, order them. I order them. They go, oh, they're already taken. So I'm not really sure what's going on, but I'm losing faith in the ticket system at Pine Knob. Now, with respect to Moody's and the banks, you may have heard that the Silicon Valley Bank, it's actually what it's called, SVBs, the Silicon Valley Bank, he had some financial issues over the weekend, and the bank almost collapsed. And in many respects, it did but they kind of stepped in and bailed it out, sort of. So it's kind of weird, but Moody's has now downgraded the U.S. banking system in general and has put Comerica, among others, on watch. So Comerica has been singled out as a potentially problem bank. Brianna Noble, Candace Williams, and Riley Beggin wrote this for the Detroit Free Press, I believe, not the Detroit News, I think. One of the three major bond credit rating businesses on Tuesday downgraded the U.S. banking system from stable to negative and put 6 banks, including Comerica, under review for a potential downgrade following the second and third largest bank failures in U.S. history. The downgrade of the U.S. banking system by Moody's Investors Service reflects the rapid deterioration in the operating environment from loss of investor confidence, increasing interest rates, and banks with substantial unrealized security losses and uninsured depositors. That's the Associate Managing Director, Donald Robertson, writing in a note. Pandemic-related fiscal stimulus, along with more than a decade of ultra-low interest rates and quantitative easing, resulted in significant excess deposit creation in the U.S. banking sector. This has given rise to asset liability management challenges, with some banks having invested excess deposits in longer-dated fixed income securities have lost value during the rapid rise in U.S. interest rates, resulting in significant unrealized losses in banks available for sale and held to maturity security portfolios. We had all kinds of things in place to keep banks from playing too fast and loose with other people's money. Many of those regulations were dialed back, and so the banks start playing a little fast and loose with the money. The next thing you know, they got a bunch of it tied up in stuff they can't cash in, and they got trouble. And that's what's causing a lot of this. A predicted recession in the latter half of the year would worsen conditions and require banks to have greater reserves. Selling securities at a loss to meet the deposit drawdowns contributed to the failure of Silicon Valley Bank on Friday. The FDIC stepped in and seized the bank's assets, which were $209 billion on paper, in response to withdrawals by its mostly tech worker and startup customers. A run at New York's Signature Bank followed, and the FDIC seized its more than $110 billion assets on Sunday. The Biden administration has assured depositors they'll be made whole from fees collected by the government from banks, not taxpayers. But as you know, if you drive through your bank or go inside and look, there's a sticker in the window, and this is banks, and it says the deposits in this bank are guaranteed up to $250,000 by the FDIC. If you deposit more than $250,000, anything above $250,000 is at risk because it's not covered by the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. Okay, so FDIC covers your deposit up to $250,000. So people who put in more than $250,000 are gambling, but that's the problem here. Lawmakers on Monday applauded the administration's actions and called for reforms, including repeal of the regulatory rollbacks on the Dodd-Frank Wall Street Reform and Consumer Protection Act. It's clear that the rolling back of Dodd-Frank made it easier for banks to take bigger risks with their customers' money. That's a rep from Lansing writing on Twitter on Tuesday. SVB got a clean bill of health from an accounting firm 2 weeks ago. So the system of checks and balances isn't working. U.S. Rep Bill Huizinga from Zeeland, in a statement, said the House Financial Services Committee will conduct oversight to determine where the failures occurred. He's the chairman of the Oversight and Investigation Subcommittee. Americans must have confidence in their financial system, and I believe they do, he said. The actions taken over the weekend by our financial regulators appear to be within the laws established by Congress. Bank stock prices on Tuesday were rebounding somewhat from their steep losses on Monday. In the afternoon, Huntington stock was at $11 a share, up 1% from the day prior, but it was down 16% from its closing price on Friday. Moody's on Monday also had placed 6 banks on watch for a downgrade. Dallas-based Comerica Inc., which of course is well known in Detroit because they are one of the big banks in Michigan. Of course, Comerica Park is named after them. And of course, they swallowed up NBD years ago. They were headquartered in Detroit until '07, and they're one of the banks that was singled out in this report. High amounts of unrealized securities losses, a lower level of capitalization, and a greater share of deposits above the FDIC's insurance threshold contributed to the review, says a senior analyst writing in a note. The circumstances could make Comerica more sensitive to rapid and large withdrawals from depositors and require it to sell its assets. Fox says that erosion, that's the analyst, of its deposit base, asset sales, crystallization loss, greater reliance on market funding, and moves that risk profitability or capitalization could trigger a downgrade. Comerica didn't have immediate comment on the announcement. At the end of 2022, Comerica's uninsured deposits were $45 billion out of $71 billion that they have in total deposits. That's 63%, according to the CFO, who said on Monday those uninsured deposits reflect its strength in the commercial sector and emphasize Comerica's strategy that attracts stickier operational deposits. Stickier. We have long-standing relationships of mutual support with our customers through cycles, referring to the cyclical nature of the financial world. And we feel confident in our business model. As of late Tuesday afternoon, Comerica stock was at $43 a share, up 4.3% since Monday. Still remained down 26% from its closing price on Friday. Moody's also put under review for potential downgrade California's First Republic Bank, Kansas's Intrust Financial Corp., Missouri's UMB Financial, Arizona's Western Alliance Bancorp, and Utah's Zions Bank Corp. Meanwhile, stock shares for New York Commodity Bancorp, which acquired last year Troy-based Flagstar, were at $6, up 1 percentage point from Monday. Shares were down about 12% from close on Friday. Grand Rapids Independent Bank Corp's stock was at $18 a share, down slightly from Monday. It was down about 9% from its closing price on Friday. Also based in Grand Rapids, Mercantile Bank Corp's stock was at $30 a share, up 1.4% from Monday. The stock was down about 6% from its close on Friday. New York-based J.P. Morgan Chase and Company, one of the largest banks in Michigan, was at $132 a share, up less than 1% on Tuesday, but they're only down about 1% from its closing price on Friday. So J.P. Morgan Chase didn't appear to get hit that hard by this recent scare in the market. And that's the thing. You can take your money and watch it wisely and invest it or save it or do whatever you want. And you think, okay, I'm watching out for myself. But then you find out that, the bank that's holding your money was doing crazy stuff with the assets that they've got under their control, which might include your money. Now, here's the deal. If you've got less than $250,000 in the bank, it's protected by the FDIC, you don't need to worry that much. But what about when you've got your money in other things like, say, mutual funds and so on? And if you put your money into a mutual fund and there's some company that tells you that, we bought these mutual funds in your name, here's how they're performing. If that company goes belly up, what have you got? And then you start wondering about this kind of stuff. And so that was the crazy thing about one of the parts of the big meltdown that happened at the end of the 2000s, was that there were banks and investment houses and financial entities that were basically gambling with the money on some really, really stupid things. And I'm not going to get too heavily into it, but there's been a lot of books written about it. I've read almost every one. Michael Lewis wrote a really, really good book about the meltdown. And they talk about all the things that were going on at these companies that just had money that they had control of. And they're like, let's do stuff to make money with this money. And now there are things that make sense. So for instance, if I am a bank and I tell people I will give you 1% interest on deposits, and you put some money in the bank, and then I find somebody who wants to borrow money for a mortgage, and I'm going to charge them 5% on the mortgage. Well, I'm paying you 1%, but I'm getting 5% over here. So you go, oh, that makes sense. You'll make money doing that. And so that's what banks used to do back in the old days. They would do things like that. And then, of course, you realize that there are some banks that go, well, this 5% every single, payment we make over 30 years of a mortgage, it's nice, but we'd like to do something more quickly. So you take that mortgage and you sell it to somebody, and they give you the present cash value of that, and you take that money again and reinvest it in something else. So you hear about these mortgages moving around and stuff, and still this all makes sense. And somebody comes along and goes, why don't we take 1,000 mortgages, put them in a pool, bundle them as a single investment, and then slice off portions so that when the 1,000 people pay their money in, their payments, we'll take all the interest and we'll pay these people. We'll take the principal and pay these people. And you go, wait a second. You just made it really, really complicated. Was that necessary? Oh, no, but it turns out that institutional investors who are looking for gigantic things to sink their money into liked it. So they started bundling these mortgages, and every time they bundled a bunch, they could sell them. So they suddenly had an incentive to bundle really, really bad mortgages. Then somebody else came along and said, well, wait a second. Why don't we sell insurance against those mortgages going bad? We'll call that a credit default swap for some weird reason. And then somebody came along and said, if I buy a credit default swap, do I have to have an interest in the mortgage that it's insuring? And somebody goes, oh, no, you don't have to. You can buy a credit default swap in anything. So there's somebody holding a bunch of bad mortgages over here. They don't buy the credit default swap. Some other guy over here buys it. When these go under, the people holding this investment gets hosed. And the guy holding a credit default swap just makes a pile of money, even though he had no interest in that other than the fact he bought a credit default swap against it going bad. And in our society, generally speaking, you cannot take out insurance against something in which you have no interest. I cannot take out arson insurance on your house for obvious reasons. I can't take out life insurance on a total stranger for obvious reasons. And yet, they let them take out the credit default swaps against mortgages they had no interest in it. And they got around it by saying, well, it's not insurance. It's a credit default swap. Sounds like insurance. No, it's a credit default swap. What is a credit default swap? It's a form of insurance on mortgages that you have no interest in. It's the weirdest thing. So you read these stories about how that happened, and you find out there are people making money selling the bundled mortgages. There were people making money selling the credit default swaps. And there were people who were just making money selling stuff. And they got transaction fees for every sale. They don't care how good the stuff is or how bad the stuff is or who's buying it. They don't care. They're making money. And so it came to a pinnacle in the real estate market where there were people at these investment firms shaking the bushes going, we just need mortgages. We just need mortgages. So there was a time when they'd give a mortgage to anybody. You could walk into a bank, I want a mortgage. They go, you got a pulse? Boom, you got a mortgage. We don't care how much money you make. We don't care if you have an income. We don't care if you're upside down financially. And so the banks were lending money to just anybody, taking that mortgage and flipping it. And it's not their problem anymore because now it's in a bundle over here owned by some institutional investor. But don't worry, it's backed by a credit default swap held by somebody else. And almost everything I just described to you, despite being 100% true, should have been borderline illegal, if not illegal. But people were making money. And so we hear about this bank in California that's threatening to go under, gets seized by the FDIC. And a lot of people had funds in there that weren't insured. And they knew it. They knew those funds were uninsured. Anybody who deposits more than $250,000 in a bank knows that they've breached the limit of the FDIC coverage. And those people started screaming, going, I'm going to lose all my money. Well, if you build a house in a flood zone, you start screaming when it rains. I mean, I know some people do, but you didn't know it was a flood zone? You never read that sticker in the window at the bank? I mean, really? Never? Not once? Didn't it occur to you what that says? Seems to me I would have caught that along the way, but That could just be me. I do tend to live my life in a rather paranoid fashion at times. So we're going to come back in just a second because General Motors is thinking about putting artificial intelligence into a car, which is, I think, the last thing a car needs right after this on My Michigan Television.
Kalamazoo Craft Beverage Week has brought so many events to our community.
Has been such an incredible benefit to local area bars and breweries like ours.
I think just the fact that there is such a thing is pretty special for our community.
To taste great craft beer, craft wine, craft spirits in the Kalamazoo community and see what we really have to offer.
It's been an awesome opportunity to see everyone come together again and just enjoy the craft beverage scene.
No matter where you choose to go for Kalamazoo Craft Beverage Week, you won't be disappointed.
A message from Detroit to everybody. The adventurers, the explorers, the nomads, and the foodies, the art enthusiasts, and the music lovers. When you're ready to come, Detroit is ready to go. From shopping and museums to restaurants, parks, and more, Motown has way too much to do in just a single day. When the time is right, all this is waiting for you in Detroit. Begin planning your next trip at visitdetroit.com.
Welcome back to My Michigan Television. General Motors is studying artificial intelligence assistant that could answer drivers' questions. I do not need my car talking to me. I don't care. I understand somewhere down the road when we have flying cars, we've all got jetpacks, our cars will probably be smarter than us, but I don't want this right now. Eric Lawrence from the Free Press writes that GM is studying the possibility of an artificial intelligence voice assistant in future vehicles, according to the company. The GM chair and CEO, Mary Barra, who was asked for details Tuesday by Fox Business Channel, referenced the company's Ultify end-to-end vehicle software platform. Ultify, which is a dumb made-up word, but whatever. It's one of many things we can put on the vehicle. The vehicle really is a software platform. And starting in 2019, GM started rolling out vehicles where you could do over-the-air updates for almost every module in the vehicle. In an interview that touched on artificial intelligence, self-driving vehicles, and a current production shutdown tied to supply chain issues at one of GM's truck plants, she explained all of this. Having an assistant with a voice that's clear enough where you can ask questions and get answers, I think that's what the artificial intelligence will enable us to do, noting that we'll be able to make your car better as you own it. That's a lofty goal, but as I pointed out previously, that Chat GPT that's in the news right now, people have pointed out how smart that thing is. And you can ask a question, and it gives you answers, and the answers sound really smart. And so one of my viewers on YouTube asked it 3 questions. What is the lemon law? What do I do if I have a lemon law claim? And can you help me? And it answered the first question 100% correctly. It says that here's what the lemon law is, and it explained it. Number 2, what do you do? It says contact the Attorney General's office in the state of Michigan, and he or she will file a lawsuit on your behalf, which is absolutely false. That is not correct. And so it wound up getting 1 out of 3 questions correct. So the artificial intelligence in the car is going to be something I rely upon. It's got to be better than the current state of artificial intelligence, such as the Chat GPT. Now, it's possible that General Motors is sitting on something that we don't know about, but that's my concern. GM spokesperson Stuart Fowle said the company has not confirmed any specific plans to deploy an AI voice assistant at this point, but that the company's software engineers are studying the space. As part of its growth strategy, General Motors views digital software and services as a core market where we intend to lead within the transportation sector. The Ultify software platform the company will deploy this year will enable a new era of software-defined vehicles with digital experiences that can grow and evolve over time. He notes that the shift won't just be about the evolution of voice commands. So, I mean, obviously, I've got no problem if you're going to say things like lock the doors and have it lock the doors for you, or turn the headlights on. I mean, I got no problem with that. My concern is that if you got this voice assistant and you ask it a question, if it gives you the wrong answer, how would you know? And again, I don't think I'd be using it all that much for those kinds of things, but I can picture people out there who would. And I mean, think of all the examples that you've heard of where someone's got a GPS unit and it tells them to turn right, and there's a lake right there, and they turn into the lake. And I've seen the photograph, for instance, of I think it's a UPS truck, but it may have been an Amazon delivery vehicle that got stuck on a golf course because it was taking turn-by-turn instructions and it made a mistake somewhere, and it told it to turn onto the golf course. And so the guy's driving across the golf course because the GPS told him to. During the interview, Mary Barra, speaking after a talk at the South by Southwest conference in Austin, stood in front of a Cruise Origin. She described it as a purpose-built ride-share vehicle. She said, we'll have this on the road yet this year, noting that Cruise has the technology up and running in San Francisco, Phoenix, and Austin, a reference to its modified Chevrolet Bolt robo-taxis. This technology is here. This vehicle is going to be on the road, and you're just going to see rideshare and autonomous vehicles continue to grow. The Free Press, however, reported in February that GM still needs approval from NHTSA to deploy the Origin, which is a small bus-like vehicle that will transport up to 6 people without a driver. It operates with autonomous technology and has no manual steering controls or pedals. The report noted that the approval depends on how satisfactorily GM answers some big questions that NHTSA is asking about the operational safety of the self-driving cars that Cruise already has on roads now. In some cases, those cars have caused traffic backups and other safety disruptions. Technology build of self-driving has made other headlines recently, with an extensive recall on Tesla vehicles related to its full self-driving beta software. NHTSA said the software may cause crashes by allowing vehicles to perform unsafe actions, according to a recent USA Today network story. When asked for an update on the status of an approval for Cruise, spokesman Daryl Harrison said the company has nothing new to share related to the Cruise Origin. During her Fox interview, Barrow was also asked about production shutdown at the company's plant in Mexico, where the Chevrolet Silverado and the GMC Sierra are built. It's what we've been dealing with for the last several years now, semiconductor shortages. The supply chain through COVID has just been stretched so tight. We all know what happened as far as semiconductors. Noting that the situation is improving, the company would be increasing production quarter to quarter this year. The company noted in a response to questions about the shutdown that production is expected to resume at the plant on Tuesday. Barrow was also asked about the impact on auto lending and potential tightening of regulations following the collapse of Silicon Valley Bank and Signature Bank. In recent days, it left markets on edge. Barrow pointed to the company's GM financial arm. With that, we're going to be in great shape to serve the customer, she said, noting that GM Financial runs a great business where they really know how to manage risk, and that she has great faith in that team. She's good to go financially, but of course the concern is with those plants having shutdowns due to the semiconductor shortage, which started during COVID and never got better. And of course, the question is, do we want artificial intelligence in our car, talking to us, doing things for us, answering questions for us? I'm not quite sure. I am a little worried about people on the road who are going to be relying too heavily on their car when the technology is not quite there yet. Now, I've seen some people who shouldn't be on the road at all. But let's face it, ain't nothing going to help them, right? So we'll see how that goes. That's going to wrap it for today on a Wednesday right here on My Michigan Television. I will see you tomorrow, as I always do, from 11 until 12. My Michigan Television. As always, until we meet again, behave yourself. Bye-bye.
My Michigan TV is streaming everywhere on Apple TV,